What's up guys, and welcome back to another EVE Online video. Today it's another big one. Revenant has launched the new expansion. It launched this morning, and it's a biggie. It's continuing the Deathless narrative, which is, I think, is pretty good. I'm pretty excited about it, and there's a whole host of changes that are going on. Some of them really exciting, and I'm pretty pumped, not gonna lie. So if you weren't aware, the expansion is this morning. The expansion notes have been available in the launcher since the 8th, so you've had a weekend to digest them. So if you haven't already read them, go and do so. I'm not going to do a full run through of all the changes because you can just go read about them, and there are a lot. But cliff notes: changes to observatory flashpoints in Poshvin. Looks like a bit of a nerf, but I can't comment directly. I've never done these, so don't really know about any of that, but it looks like a little bit of a nerf to the observatory flashpoints in Poshvin. One thing I'm quite excited about, and it's just in here as a bit of a footnote, is new relic sites in drone space, NPC space. At the moment in drone space in nullsec, only data sites spawn, and they're specific drone data sites. But now they're talking about new relic sites, so that's just new content to go and find, and I love a bit of exploration. You'll have seen videos of me in the past roaming around drone space, so pretty keen to go and find out what they are. Very little information though. Ancient salvage materials and other valuable rewards. Could just be standard relic sites, but who knows. Bit of a graphics overhaul for nullsec combats. The distinct module icons is really nice. So in game now, like the magnet, for example, all the icons that looked the same. So like the heatsink, the gyro stabilizer, the magnetic field stabilizer, they now have unique icons. So let's just quickly go with magnetic field stabilizer module. Well, let's just find the regular one, Tech 2. It now has a specific icon, so you know that a magnetic field stabilizer is a magnetic field stabilizer. They've done that for a bunch of items like the shield power relays and so on. So that's a really positive change, a little bit of quality of life thing. And then a bunch of adjustments to a few ships. Some pretty big buffs. So like the Stabber Fleet issue had added a pretty significant fall off in it, so that's a decent buff. But then some of the overpowered heavily used ships have been nerfed a little bit. So like, again, I'm not going to go into detail. Go and have a read yourself. And CCP also do a pretty good job of explaining why they're making these changes. But the Exec Navy's been nerfed. Cyclone Fleet's been nerfed. The Harbinger Navy has had a very small buff to power grid. Merm Navy has been buffed. Absolution buffed. And then we get into the Marauders, which have had another pretty big hit to them, but in my opinion, super positive. And again, the explanation as to why makes a lot of sense, right? So basically, the battleship bonus to like buffer tank, so shield extenders and armor plates, has been removed from Marauders. So you can they're only really viable if you're going to active tank them. And the Vargas had another nerf. CPU reduction and fall off reduction. And while I don't want to comment directly on what that's going to do, because I can't say, of course, they are still used everywhere. Vargas are constantly in Wormhole and nullsec particularly. Almost every conflict involves Vargas, so anything that kind of reduces their strength in the meta, I think is going to be quite positive, so that we can start flying other ships. This is a nice one, which I think is going to be exciting, but again, I don't know very much about it. But basically, you're going to be able to reprocess Abyssal modules now, which will then generate mutaplasmid residue, and you can use that mutaplasmid residue to build new items. And there are going to be new blueprints to go alongside them. So basically any rubbish rolls you've had before aren't going to be wasted anymore. You can reprocess them into mutaplasmid residue. Ship information window has been overhauled, which I really like. I'll come back to that in a second because I'm going to do that in game. It's really nice. Corporation projects have had another big step change. I'm going to do a deep dive into this in another video later this week. So if you're interested in that, make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on. But going to do a deep dive into that. But really, really positive changes here. Another big step in the right direction for corporation projects. Great news. SKINR. Again, really big positive changes. CCP just continue to improve these building blocks that they put in for these things. So corporation projects, the first step was great, but didn't really go far enough, and they continue to move. And the same thing is happening with SKINR. So there's going to be, for example, like you can add a secondary pattern now. So previously you could just have one pattern. Now you can have a secondary pattern or a nested pattern. You can even randomize if you want a little bit of inspiration. You can't get started. They're going to add more patterns, of course. And it's also going to basically make it so that it's a lot easier for you to list and create things for individuals or for corporations instead of them just being publicly on the Paragon store. You can basically target the listings to corporation, alliance, or character. And again, that should make things quite a lot easier. We'll be exploring corporation skins moving forward because you've got to look nice, right? Again, the other people will do great videos on these, so I'm not going into detail. What I am going to go into detail on, because this is exciting, we have new ships, which hopefully you are aware were coming. 2 new ships, both belonging to the Deathless faction. And these bring about, they kind of close the gap that's missing in faction ships, utilizing Caldari and Minmatar skills, which is a gap that hasn't been used. You got like Amar Galente, Galente Caldari, Amar Minmatar, and I think maybe Amar Caldari. But no Caldari Minmatar, so this is the first time this has happened. We have a destroyer, the Tholos, and we have a battle cruiser, the Cenotaph. Now, I'm going to jump in game to go through these in more detail, but alongside these, so new ships is super exciting always anyway, but we also have a brand new weapon system, breacher pod launchers, and basically these are introducing damage over time for the first time in EVE. So like, you know, in other games like a burn damage or poison damage or something in other games where it impacts your enemy for a significant period of time, we have this for the first time here, the breach pod. So go and have a read of this because it's quite important. One of the things I really like about it is like kind of the lore as to what like a breacher pod is. Basically, you launch a boarding crew, so your weapon launches a little pod that has a boarding crew on board, and then that boarding crew lands on the opposition ship and runs around for a period of time, causing damage because they're boarded and they're going to break systems from the inside. So I really like that. It works quite well with the cloning stuff that the Deathless are working on. So yeah, super cool. And there are some interesting effects that they're going to introduce. So one of the things is that the damage over time doesn't stop if you die, if you lose your ship, or even if you're podded. The damage over time continues. So there's I'm sure there will be lots of examples where people get kills after they've been knocked off the battlefield, or if there's a one-on-one duel that both parties die because the breach pod carries on doing damage afterwards. And it's also a percentage HP of the target is the damage. So it caps out. There is a damage cap, which for the medium, for example, is, I think it was 800. Well, if you max out your skills, it goes to 1,000. But it won't do 1,000 if you are attacking something smaller. So with max skills, it does 1% of the HP per second. I'm going to dive into that in a bit more detail in a minute, though, because it's not clear. Some of the mechanics aren't clear from the expansion notes or the in-game tool. So let's jump in. I'm actually in a cenotaph right now, cloaked up, because I'm chilling over here. Oh, the final thing. So I should have mentioned I've got one in my hangar, and there's also in the expansion notes is also mercenary dens, which are a new way to interact with skyhooks. Basically, they're going to have a variety of impacts, but you can anchor them. I'll warp to one in a second, and we can have a look. There's one attached to this skyhook. They can only be anchored on temperate planet skyhooks, and they basically there's a bit of PvE associated with it. They can spawn anomalies, and they can either improve or harm the workforce that's coming out of your planet, depending on whether you let like anarchy increase or whether you get order in there. And they also produce an item that can then be traded with the Deathless for certain items, like the ships and the blueprints, for example. I was quite excited about the coming of the mercenary dens, but I think they're going to be pretty limited. My opinion is they're going to be quite limited in what they can do. At least how we can interact with it, unless you live in nullsec. I thought maybe if wormholers, for example, or even people from highsec could filament down, and like anchor a mercenary den, guard it for a few hours while it does its thing, and then like unanchor it and leave. But that's not really the case. They have a 24-hour reinforcement timer, just like a lot of other structures. So basically, what I expect to happen is anyone owning SOV and owning temperate skyhooks will anchor a mercenary den on it, and then that's it. We can't really interact with that anymore because it takes 24 hours to reinforce it, and then you come back and you got to fight. And we can't, if we're coming out of wormhole, if you're filamenting down from somewhere else, you can't just hang around for 24 hours and wait for that reinforcement timer. So it's not really something we're going to be able to interact with, is my suspicion. But we'll see. So back to the ships. I am in a cenotaph. Couple other big things to note. Let's go into show info. And here we have the glorious new ship information screen. It's only the show info on ships that we've got this. Everything else has the normal show info. But the ship one, really nice. So you can look at your ship in 3D in the info screen, which is quite a nice touch. You get a little bit of words and obviously all the same information you would before, but presented a little bit better. So you can go through the side here, get the attributes, the fitting, and all the normal stuff, skills, so your mastery level, and so on. Skin availability, but it's a bit more intuitive. It all looks a lot nicer, at least in my opinion. And there is something about you can make it really compact, so you could, it can go very, very compact as a window, so you can keep your show info open while you're doing other things if you want to. And I actually have no idea if this was possible before. I've only noticed it on this new window. You can just drag it into a chat channel from here, and it will share straight away. Anyway, on the cenotaph, both the new ships, the Tholos, the destroyer, and the cenotaph are covert ops capable, which is again pretty exciting for a wormholer. I can't think of any other covops capable battle cruisers, so that's going to be very interesting to see what we can kind of do with these guys, whether there's a bit of hit and run tactics or just getting in up close before really brawling. Shield based, of course, Caldari bonuses to shield, and then the Minmetal bonuses are to stasis webfire resistance, so you can move fast basically if on the battlefield up close to people. So if you're in web range, this is going to help protect you. And then it's bonus to medium projectiles and heavy assault missiles. I'm going to come back to that in a second because there's a very interesting thing and it's fitting. Because it's a combat battlecruiser, you can fit a single command burst, of course, and then again projectile turrets and missile bonuses, and then the medium breacher pod launcher. And it's immune to all cargo scanners, which I hadn't noticed before. So it could be decent to haul in covops. You know, it's not got a tiny cargo hold. So yeah, interesting. So something to think about that I found quite interesting in the fitting. I've just thrown something together here that is probably rubbish, so don't don't look at it. But you know, why can't I make this window bigger? Just can't apparently. But of course, I've got a breacher pod in, and I've got a cloak on. But then we've got 8 high slots. So if you take those out of the equation, because maybe you want them, you've then got 6 high slots to play with. But each of the hard point, you only got 3 launcher hard points and 3 turret hard points. So it looks like it's been set up and designed specifically to be viable using 2 weapon types simultaneously, the medium projectile turrets and the heavy assault missiles, which would be quite interesting, and particularly as it would have the third, because it's got the breach pod as well. You could have 3 weapon types plus a flight of drones, so 4 different weapon types in play, which would be very interesting. I chose to go with a command burst, and therefore not with the projectile turrets in this fit, but this really is just a cobbled together fit, so I'm not even going to tell you what it is. Limited in the number of lows though. There's only 3 low slots, so you would probably need to choose which damage source you're going to primary, so that you can bonus that damage particularly. But yeah, this is something I thought was interesting. They've clearly designed it to be viable, having multiple damage types. Yeah, I'm not really sure what else to go into with the ship itself, so we're going to move on to the weapon system now, the breacher pods. So let's just have a quick look. I've put a few skills into it, so you can see my DPS now is capped at 880. What that does mean is the DPS that you'll see on here isn't going to be very accurate, because 880 of this comes from the breacher pod. But unless I'm attacking something that has, what's 880 times 100? 88,000 HP or more, I'm not going to be doing 880 DPS. I'm going to be doing it less, scaled down, and that's only with max skills, of course, as well. Yeah, so basically, if you've got max skills, you can do 1,000 DPS, but the ship you're attacking is going to have 100,000 HP to do 1,000 DPS. So your DPS numbers are going to be a bit off in here. And then the other thing, which I'm going to go and demonstrate in a second, is it's not clear. If I go into, let's go the charge for a second, attributes, it's not clear what the damage is, what they're classing as like HP and so on. I'm going to try and explain what I mean by that. Probably with a bit of a direction. Basically, you can see in here we have maximum damage per second, 880 HP, and it has the explosive symbol by it. So I assumed that meant it would be explosive damage that was done to the enemy, and that might still be true. But if we now just drop in here at 0 and start trying to fight these guys, when we attack the battleships, we should see where my confusion kind of comes in. Okay, so if it's doing explosive damage, can you fit explosive resistance to counter it or not? And does the HP, is that the entire HP of the ship, or is that the HP of the shield or the armor or the whatever that you're taking on at that specific moment? All this is kind of unknown to me at the moment. I've not really been able to figure it out, so we'll see. The range is also pretty limited, so you really are going to have to kind of brawl with these ships. So the breach pods, for example, I've got a max range currently of 9,600 meters. You can push that up, but not by much, maybe to 12,000-ish. And also, you with skills can push out the duration of the damage over time effect. So at the moment with my skills I've got 60 seconds, but I think you can go up to maybe 75, I think it is in the patch notes. But we're going to go and head over to this Eliminator because it's one of the stronger ships, and see what we can do. You can see you can fit these to be tanky boys. Like I've not got my rep running, I've just got my 2 multi-specs running, and my incoming damage is tiny. Chuck that rep on and you're done. You're like, chuck that up, no problem. But right, let's head into this Eliminator. Get in nice and close and see what we can see with regards to the damage type. Excuse me. So, oh yeah, and obviously you can just run my command burst to make sure that I'm even safer. Okay, so in the resist profile on the Eliminator we have a 64% shield and armor explosive, but then when we get to structure, 0%. That's important and the thing I'm trying to test at the moment. We're nearly close enough. I am slow because I've only got an afterburner on. I'm going to have to rethink that in a fit, I think, but let's see. Okay, we are close enough to launch our Scarab, so let's have a little look at what that looks like to start with. Out he goes, and around, and this has landed, and now you get a little pop-up down here that's saying current DPS and the time it's running for. And you can see that it's ticking away and we're doing 144 damage per tick. Okay, and that's in the shield, which has that high resistance. If I now attack him with my missiles so that we chunk through him a little bit quicker, that carries on for a while. If you add another Scarab, it doesn't stack. The effect doesn't stack. You can only have one running at a time. But what I could do is you can put another Scarab on a different ship, and it will damage that. They'll damage that one simultaneously. But there's no point in me firing another one at this guy until this one's finished. But I will do that now, so it's got time to land. And we're still doing 144 per tick in the armor, which again to be expected, same resist. But when we enter structure now, we're still doing 144 per tick, which either means the explosive resistance is having no impact on my damage type from this breacher pod, which I think is the most likely outcome. The other alternative is somehow the DPS is a percentage of just the shield, just the armor, just the structure, and the amount of structure is, what would it be, 64% less exactly than the amount of armor and shield, which seems unlikely. But you could see while I was doing all that talking, the breach pod just killed the ship in the meantime. But so that's kind of what I mean. It's not currently clear from the tooltip exactly what the breacher pod kind of does in terms of damage. So just to recap, yes, okay, it does 880 DPS if you've got a big enough HP to take on. Does that percentage HP apply to just the shield, just the armor, just the structure, or the whole thing collectively? Not clear. Even though it's an explosive damage type, it looks like the resistance, you can't resist against it. So even if you just went 100%, obviously not possible, but if you went 100% explosive, it would still do 880 DPS by the looks of things. So that's all interesting. And then the other thing, which is in the expansion notes, which just also is quite an interesting element, is that there's a bunch of other stuff that it just ignores. So the damage over... Oh, okay, so it does say, okay, the damage over time effect completely ignores resistances. I did miss that. before. Interesting. Okay. So it looks like the damage over time effect just ignores everything. It will continue doing damage when it's in warp, that's fair enough, but continue doing damage while you're tethered, that's interesting. I wonder if the remote rep from the tether will counter that sufficiently. Will also completely ignore resistances, so that we've just worked out, which means the effect will fully damage ships which have the assault damage control on or the emergency damage control, and it can reply to Rorquals in panic mode. Okay, a player ship can only be affected by one damage over time effect at once. Okay, so I was gonna say maybe, you know, if I can only apply DPS once from it, but someone else could, then of course, you know, Bomber's Bar or someone could go jump on every Rorqual and just in a bunch of Tholoses and just launch 100 breacher pods at them and watch them melt. Looks like that's not going to be possible, because they would only get damage from one of them at once. So yeah, okay, so the worst case scenario if you're a Rorqual pilot is you can be taking 1,000 DPS even while you're in panic mode. Okay, interesting. But yeah, but it's nice that it's, I quite like that it's percentage health based, so of course you can be fighting, trying to deal with a frigate that's got you tackled, and your pod's not just going to one-shot them, but if you go and take on a Titan, you're going to do 1,000 DPS, which is pretty nice. Cool, and then just while we melt through this guy, as we're here, this is what a mercenary den looks like. So as you can see, it's kind of tethered to the side of a skyhook on a temperate planet. And yeah, basically the the lore behind these again is that they are what are they called? Like bars kind of thing. So developed an open source facility known as the Mercenary Den, was designed as a hub for clones to rest and relax, and now they've become congregating points for mercenaries. So you can enjoy alcoholic drinks, watch the latest Scope broadcasts, and engage in impromptu combat training. So that's the lore behind it, which I quite like. And that also then kind of describes how you can end up with anarchy or with decent order and stuff in there, because if you just let things get out of hand, then it's going to go and impact the workforce that's coming up from the temperate planet. But if I were to shoot this, and they're not weak, I think attributes collectively 1.5 million hit points, with 25% resists, so not weak. And then it enters a 24-hour reinforcement period with a bit of jitter, so you can't guarantee when it's going to be. So it could be 18 hours, it could be 30 hours. That's random. Okay, cool. So that's a bit of a dive into an overview of the patch notes, and a bit of dive into the new ship and their modules. As mentioned, I've just shown you the battle cruiser, but the Tholos is the same principle. So if I just quickly have a look at this, and we get all the same kind of stuff, right? Projectile turrets and rockets instead of medium projectile turrets and heavy assault missiles, but fitting same again, right? So 6 high slots, so breacher pod, cloak, and then 2 and 2 for the different hard points. So definitely pushing you towards fitting the multiple weapon systems. But these are cool. I'm excited to use these. I'm going to be skilling into them as quickly as I can, because we're CovOps and we live in wormholes, so why the hell not? And the new weapon system. Very exciting. So with that, guys, we've hit half an hour, so it's a bit longer than I intended to be, but thank you very much for watching. I do appreciate it. If you want to go and take advantage of the Eve store or the Marquee Dragon store, please consider using my link in the description or the creator code WAD when you're at checkout. And I will be, as mentioned, I will be doing a deep dive into the update to corporation projects later this week. So if you're interested in seeing that, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I appreciate you watching and sticking with me, and I will see you all in the next one. Cheers.